So hello everyone and welcome to this webinar, our digital credential journey with the International Association of Privacy Professionals. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping notes. First of all, I should tell you that this session is being recorded and we'll send a link to the recording out afterwards. And also you will see on your screen a question and answers panel. Do feel free to post any questions to that and we will endeavour to answer as many of those at the end as we can. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome our participants today, and joining us on the call we have Doug Foreman, the Certification Director from the IAPP, and also his colleague Corey Stewart, the Certification Coordinator. My name is Ian Woodgate and we've also got my colleague Jen Backer on the call to help field any calls towards the end. And I thought it would be good to start with a fact about the IAPP and their use of the Accredible platform, which is, to date, over 7,000 recipients have added and shared their certificates on LinkedIn. And this is very powerful, I think, because it's kind of marketing without feeling like marketing. One thing Accredible does is it makes it very easy for participants, for recipients to become advocates, as well as increasing their sense of achievement, because everybody likes to share and promote their successes, right? So with that thought in mind, I'm just going to briefly move on and we shall talk through the agenda for today's session. First of all, Doug and Corey are going to say a few words to introduce the IAPP, and then we're going to move on to talk about how the IAPP used to do certification kind of the old way. Then they're going to cover off some of the things that influenced their decision to choose Accredible. And next we'll go and talk through their implementation and the process that they went through to implement the solution. Then we'll look at the impact, and towards the end we shall move on and take a look at a model that really has been evolving at the IAPP, which I think is very interesting, which is for the use of both badges and certificates together. And finally we'll wrap up, as I've said, with a Q&A session. So Doug and Corey, I hope that sounds okay to you.
That sounds great. Okay, the IAPP has been around for about 20 years now. We are a kind of one-stop shop for people who are working in privacy and data protection. As you know, as our participants might know, data privacy and protection has been in the news a lot lately, and so we have a lot of people coming to us for training, for certifications, attending our events, and attending our webinars, and everything else we do to support the profession. That increase in the amount of people getting our certifications, as you will hear in a little bit, put us in a bit of a pickle in terms of credentialing and our certificate process. We are a not-for-profit. We strive to support the profession, and many of our clients include some of the biggest names in digital, the digital economy right now: Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and whatnot.
Thank you very much, Doug. And perhaps you'd just like to say a little bit about the certifications that you offer through the platform.
Sure. We have our certification. Our CIPP is kind of our flagship certification. It's for, again, it's about as old as the IAPP, and it's broken down by region. So we have one for Europe, the United States, Canada, and Asia. We also have a management credential for those people who are, managing privacy in their organization, and a couple newer ones too. One devoted to the privacy technologist, works with data on, and how to manipulate data so that privacy is enhanced, and a privacy law specialist and a fellow of information privacy, and we manage all of those credentials through Accredible.
Thank you very much, Doug. And I think I'm right in saying as well that you issue the credentials, but they expire after 2 years, don't they?
Yes, for everything but the privacy law specialist and the fellow, we have 2-year recertification period. So we renew everybody's credentials after a 2-year period.
So that's interesting, because obviously from our point of view, renewals is something that's can be handled within the platform.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's move on, and perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the old way of how you used to manage the processes around issuing certificates and some of the challenges that had.
Sure, I'll have Corey do that. He was very close. He was on the kind of the ground level of issuing certs, so I'll let him talk about that.
Okay, perfect. Once again, Corey Stewart with the IAPP in the certification department. So when I first started working here, we were still doing our credentials as a paper process. So essentially what we were doing is having them printed by a third party, and then we would manually in the office go ahead and package and mail the certificates out to our latest certificates for the month, as well as people that we were renewing for another 2-year term. So as you'll see, it took multiple days of the month to actually set up the order, get the order, and then go ahead and print and mail everything and send it out. This turned into a big problem for us, mainly because we would have a lot of certificates that actually either wouldn't make it to the people we were sending them to, or they would get, returned in the mail, wrong addresses on file, things like that. All the kind of normal things you run into with mail. But the problem is that we didn't have a quick solution to get these certificates to people that suddenly needed them. Either they needed them for a job as proof of certification, and they wanted something a little bit more official. So we would run into those types of problems. And also, obviously, as this grew, as our different certifications have grown, we've added certifications that we needed to create certificates for, and we have more and more people testing every year. The labor to actually have these printed, sent to us, and then send them out from our office was becoming pretty burdensome on all of us, as far as just the printing and sending, and then actually getting them back, trying to resend them, and it just became a bit too much for our department, to be honest.
We also, as an ANSI accredited organization, we had to make sure that our certificates, if they were suspended or revoked, weren't still using the credential. And it was very difficult to do that with paper certificates. Somebody can frame it and put it on their wall, change the end date. There were all kinds of concerns with fraud. There really was no way to handle urgent requests or verification requests from employers. It was a very slow process. It was emailing people, and so that also created a lot of kind of just sludge in the system.
Thank you very much, both. And I think an interesting point to raise here as well is that whilst some of your challenges were directly related to the handling and processing of paper and to mailing certificates, a lot of these challenges actually would apply equally if you had a manual process, or if you were emailing PDFs or something like that. Some of them are directly related to the paper, but actually when you drill into it, quite a lot of them would have applied anyway, even if you did, as I say, even if you were, say, emailing PDFs, for example, which is a situation a lot of our customers are in when they start coming and talking to us.
Right. That would have been a nightmare as well. As I said, we were, we sought out Accredible at a time when we were maybe testing 200 people a month and maybe certifying 150 of those people. But we were quickly, due to the environment and privacy around the world, we were quickly heading to 500 to 1,000 people testing per month, with having to hand out 850 unique credentials on top of those people recertifying. So the idea of emailing, wasn't PDFs was not an option for us. We didn't even really entertain that.
Yeah, many of the same problems still apply with that kind of solution. Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's a really good synopsis, guys, of a situation you were in before. So you obviously faced some choices to make a change, and I think next it would be good if we could just talk briefly about the reasons behind the choice of Accredible.
Well, I'll do a couple, and then I'll hand it out to Corey. But
sounds good.
Cost effective. That wasn't First of all, when we found out about Accredible and looked at the cost, that was not a barrier at all. We would have and would still pay a lot more for this feature. The resource time that went into basically stopping work for 2 or 3 days a month to send credentials was enormous. The fact that we were able to do this for cents per credential or $1 per credential, I think when we started was great for us. Corey can talk about the ease of use and all the capabilities.
Yeah, when I first started working in the certification department, it was a few months into us using Accredible, so I was taught fairly quickly how to use it and all the functionality. It was really easy to pick up, very intuitive. So there are a lot of different things that we can do to kind of enhance the customer experience with Accredible by being able to quickly get people what they need as far as a certificate. And as mentioned on the slide, there are different privacy controls that we can easily toggle for, specific certificates, or we can do it for all the ones that we have. And obviously too, whenever we do have some type of question about Accredible, it's really easy to get in touch with our contacts there. We hear back same day.
Thank you very much, both. One thing I'm going to touch on next, though, I think is a concern that you had about the move, and I'm going to share it because it's a concern that very many of our customers have, and it's simply this: are they going to be upset about not having a paper certificate? So many people, in your situation, one of the perceived barriers to moving to Accredible is thinking, hey, our recipients, they like getting a paper certificate. How are they going to feel about that change? So I know you had that concern. Let's leave it as an open question for now. Talk through the implementation, and then we can, after the implementation, we can talk about what the how receptive people were to that change, if that sounds okay.
Great, absolutely.
Okay, so let's move on and talk a little bit about the implementation, because I know one of the things that the IAPP did was that you made a hard switch, what I call a hard switch to Accredible. Perhaps the two of you would like to tell us a little bit more about that and about the implementation generally.
Sure. Well, first of all, I wanted to mention how easy it is to design the certificates with the help of Accredible. We actually have in-house graphics people, and it was very easy for them to use the templates to design the credential pretty much any way we wanted to, whatever fields we needed in order to individualize the certificate itself. And so that is extremely easy. Also, we loved Accredible because there was no need to create an API or have any kind of, real hook in. It was very simple to start using it. And we did do a hard switch, and we basically told everybody, as of this date, we are going to issue electronic certificates. And we wanted to make sure that we gave it to everybody. So we didn't just start with new certificates. We gave one to everybody because, the power of the marketing of Accredible as a marketing tool would only, be realized, or would be realized more slowly if we only did it for new certificate holders. So we did that. And again, they helped us with all the email templates that needed to go out to people to explain how to use Credential, tutorials, everything like that. So, there were almost, no glitches to the implementation. It was really seamless.
Thank you very much, both. And yes, I think one of the things I recall is that you used that with the certificate design, a lot of your certificates, they look quite similar, and you obviously shared that underlying certificate design, and I think that's really nice, both because it simplifies the creation of new certificates, but also it actually enhances the brand as well, because there's some nice consistency across the different designs of the certificates.
Right, and one other great thing too is, we're able to use anybody in our organization that I give permission to can create a certificate or a badge, and with maybe 20 minutes of teaching to a new user, and so you don't feel that, oh, we have to wait till somebody's in the office to create a new credential for somebody. It's pretty much automatic. We have, anybody on our customer service staff can create a credential for somebody, or make a fix or something like that.
Sure. And just picking up as well on the hard switch, I think that was, that turned out to be a very good decision. I remember you saying as well, there's no confusion about where somebody's certificate is. It's from this day forwards, all certificates will be in Accredible, and everyone knew exactly where they stood.
Exactly.
Okay, so implementation, that was a good summary of the implementation and how you went about it. Let's just move on now and talk about some of the impact that the switch had. So over to yourselves again.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mentioned a little bit of it. We don't have to stop work and have everybody stuffing envelopes. That was one great thing. The costs, just in terms of dollars, is much lower. I mean, and recently, Accredible did something that's going to even make it even more cost efficient for us. We have many people who have multiple credentials from us, and we recently aligned their terms so that their terms end on the same date. When we update those new credentials, we won't get charged per credential. We just get charged per user. So, something that we already saw as a big cost saving has become even more of a cost saving for us. I think Corey talked about same day issuing. There's, when somebody passes an exam, they're super excited. They have what they think is a really powerful credential. They don't have to wait 2 weeks to see a piece of paper or something to share. It's immediate, and they can immediately put this out there, show their employer, and however they want to use it. And like I mentioned, with the workload delegation, Corey doesn't have to be the only one, using the platform or managing certificate creation. We also thought this was just a cool thing. When we first did it, our organization is, because it's in the technology world, in the privacy and technology world, our people are very tech savvy, and so we thought, wow, I think people are going to really like this. Have this, new kind of cutting edge credential that they could share with people electronically, and so that was another driving factor for us, on top of all the other savings, and being able to sever our relationship with our print vendor, who's out in the middle of the country somewhere, so all those things made a huge impact, to the point now where, the whole organization, even outside of certification, is starting to figure out how they can use Accredible for badging and for other kinds of recognition of our volunteers and other subject matter experts.
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Doug. So, do you recall before we talked about implementation, we posed a concern, and that was the concern as to how people react to not having a piece of paper anymore. And I think perhaps Doug and Corey, perhaps you would comment on what the reaction to that was, because I know it was a very real concern at the time.
Yeah, I think I don't know that it was much of a concern for me and Corey, but it certainly was for our CEO and our chief operating officer. They were worried that, we're not giving a tangible proof of their accomplishment. And I think that was the only real barrier to adoption, I thought, in our organization. But Corey was on the front lines of any kind of feedback from people, so I'll let him talk about that.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. Yeah, on my end, from a more of a customer service perspective, for the most part, the response was positive. I mean, a lot of people just kind of continued on, and sometimes every once in a while, even now still, and it's been a few years, people sometimes still expect a paper certificate. That's kind of gone down since 2015 when we first started with Accredible. Every once in a while I'll get an email saying, hey, you know, I passed my exam a couple weeks back. When should I expect a paper certificate? And then we explain we don't have paper certificates anymore, but we do have this thing through Accredible. We do digital certificates now, and here's what you can do with them. And I mean, for the most part, the response I get is positive. I think people like the access. They like to be able to go ahead and have the immediate access and then be able to share the certificate with employers, with other certified people. And it's just a lot easier than just getting a single paper certificate. And, you know, it just works out a lot better, I think, for our customer base.
I think when we did it at the time, and like you said, it was a hard stop, and we had thousands of electronic certificates that we sent out. You know, we might have had one or two people, you know, come back to us with I wish I had a piece of paper. But, you know, it was overwhelmingly positive, and continues to be that way now for all of our certificates. So, you know, and I don't know if we mentioned it before, but just also because we're a privacy organization, you know, the ability for us to, you know, set controls on these certificates that only, so that only certain people can see it. You know, they can set it so they're the only ones who can see it, or they can, you know, change it to public. Also, the use of blockchain by Accredible is, you know, another huge verification that, you know, this credential came from the IAPP, and, you know, nobody else. There was no forgery or anything like that.
That's great. Thank you very much, both. And of course, you know, there is no paper certificate being issued anymore, but people are absolutely free to download a high quality, print quality PDF and print it out if they want to still.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we've mentioned that to our people, and some people still do it. But you know, I think in the changing culture right now, you know, there's just less and less people are less and less attached to something like that.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, thank you very much, both. And now what I want to do is move on and talk briefly about the model that I've discussed with you both fairly recently, because I do think this is very interesting, about how you plan to use the two slightly differing but complementary technologies around both badges and certificates. I know at the moment, obviously, you're a big user of certificates, but you're looking at badges. So perhaps you could say one or two words just to explain kind of what your thoughts are around how you would use badges as opposed to certificates.
Sure. Well, you know, with a full-blown certification program that is, you know, with ongoing education requirements, a certificate, you know, really is necessary for that kind of formal attainment. But we've long wanted to use badges throughout the organization. It's just been, you know, taking a little while to get the other departments to have the bandwidth to get involved. But we know that badges are another way that we can recognize our volunteers. You know, the IAPP runs on you know, volunteer boards, on subject matter experts, on we have these smaller chapters around the world that meet frequently, and they have leaders who we would like to recognize. So right now we have a pretty robust initiative underway to recognize all of those people. They could be, you know, question writers for our exams, our board members, people who review our training, You know, we might even start giving out badges for people who attend some of our events. There's really a kind of an unlimited use to Accredible. And you know, when you think outside of just the formal area of certification, and so we're going to start using that. And not only that, you know, you can also give your certification course completers, you can give them a badge too if they find that they'd like to use that instead of the certificate. So with no extra cost. So badging is going to be a very powerful way for us for people to share, you know, different kinds of involvement with the IAPP.
Okay, thank you very much both. And I'm delighted to say that we are pretty much bang on time, guys. We're just going to wrap up now, if that's okay, and then we'll move on to the question and answers, if that sounds okay.
Of course.
Yeah, great.
So to all attendees, I hope you've enjoyed this session. There's a few actions that we've got here. If you'd like to learn more about the platform, you can sign up for a trial account on the address given on the screen. Or if you would need any more information or have further questions, please do contact us at sales@accredible.com. We also have the IAPP case study available for download. And actually as well, if you are interested in the solution, but you want some more information with regards to the business case, then please do email us, and we would be delighted to send you through a copy of that white paper. In closing then, before we move on to the Q&A session, I would just like to thank both Doug and Corey very much for their participation. It really is very much appreciated. And also, I know we've got Jen in the background who has been diligently trying to answer your questions as you posted as much as she can, and also respond on some of the chats. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending. We hope you found it useful. Thanks again to both Doug and Corey from the IAPP. And if you're all right to hang on the line for a few minutes, both, we shall just dive into some of the questions.
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so I've got some questions open here. The first one, it's a good question. It's having gone through the process, is there anything that you would do differently?
That's a good question. I think we probably would have maybe Accredible has a ton of features, and I think we were so focused on the certificate process that we probably would have maybe used more of the features right off the bat. And for example, you know, we have, you know, the ability in Accredible to do the white labeling, where you can, you know, where it looks like Accredible's site looks like your site. Basically, there's more branding. You know, I think on our homepage, we would have done some of that earlier. I think also, you know, there's some other features that Accredible has that we would have, you know, we probably would have dived into a little bit more. So, but that's on us. You know, other than that, I don't think I would have done anything differently.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, what type of support was needed by your membership when the digital downloads were launched? So I guess, you know, I know you had a comms plan. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit more about how you supported the users over that transition. I think that's what the question is really getting at. I think it's a good question.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I know at the time we basically had to come up with a plan internally as far with talking points and everything, how to address any questions that did come in for, you know, from customers about Accredible, why we were switching. So we had a bunch of things that we were ready to go over at the time that the switch came. And we definitely gave, I mean, at least a few months heads up to let people know, hey, you know, we're going to be switching from paper certificates to Accredible certificates. It's going to be a hard switch. There aren't going to be, you know, kind of like a tiered change. So at that point, we just let people know that we were going to do that, and we kept to those deadlines, and we just, you know, went over any questions really at that time.
We didn't, you know, supporting the membership, I think, you know, once we sent out the credentials, you know, we, most of the support was just Corey and the others in our department being able to tell people how to use it, you know, how to, and that was super simple. We also have like a customer service staff that answers the phones. We made sure that they knew how to use it and they knew what they were doing. But we really relied on like our marketing department to, prepare everybody for the switch. But in terms of just supporting our members, it's so simple to use Accredible that there really wasn't, we were able to solve most issues almost immediately.
Okay, thank you both. A couple more questions if you're okay.
Oh, sure.
The next one is, have you found that employers who value your certification understand how to use the metadata to verify the credential? So I think it's about employers, they see the credential. Do they understand the kind of process of verifying that credential?
Sure. I think, we actually get, it's actually really important because a lot of the people that use our credentials are maybe they're in a job search or they're looking for a job. And what happens is, the person who gets certified is really eager to have that. There's a mobile version of the certificate. I think it's important to highlight that. And they bring their phone into the interview and they're just say here I have these certifications. More and more in data privacy, people are asking if you have an IAPP certification in the job process. But I think we used to have an online verification system for certifications. We still do, but this has really taken over that whole process. We don't get verification requests from employers anymore because of, I think they accept the validity of the electronic certificate. So that's kind of taken the place of any kind of, fielding phone calls from employers or getting verification letters that we used to send out and things like that.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll just ask one more question if that's okay. We do have a lot of attendees today and there are quite a few questions being posted. Apologies if your question hasn't been answered. Please rest assured we will get back to you with an answer, but we will just take that offline.
Okay. We have time too on our end, so.
Okay, well in that case, maybe I'll ask two more questions then.
Okay.
Okay, so a question here is, how long did it take to get from the initial idea to actually issuing your first certificate? I think that's a great
probably only, a few months maybe. It's hard to remember exactly back then, but it was fortuitous. I found Accredible. I think I might have received some kind of marketing email. And it was right about the time that I was getting frustrated with our paper. And so I contacted them immediately. And I think, it's the kind of thing where, you can make it probably as short or as long as you want. I mean, at the time, I think Accredible is fairly new. So there might have been a little bit more back and forth in terms of, design and the email letters. But I don't think it was more than, 2 or 3 months because we were in a hurry. Once we got the approval from our CEO, we went right away in and had the designed and then email out to all of our certified members and basically told them that that the next credential is going to be electronic. So really it was a matter of maybe 2 or 3 months.
Okay, thank you very much. And the final question is, could you explain a little bit more about how you handle the process of certificate renewal?
Yeah, Corey can answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. So with certificate renewal, from our system that we have, we draw or pull a list of the people who have completed their requirements for the previous term. We do this on a monthly basis. What we then do is Accredible has a specific Excel template that we put that data into and then upload it to Accredible with the upload feature. Basically from there, the credentials update things like dates. Sometimes we do have to do a little bit on manual as far as making some changes if things like email addresses have changed, or sometimes on our end certificate numbers can change a little bit. But really it's a fairly easy process. It's mostly pulling a list of those people and then doing an upload. And like I said, we do that on a monthly basis. We just pull the people from the previous month that did complete their requirements and then upload them during the month.
Corey, what about suspension?
I mean, with suspensions, it works a little bit differently. So our certificates use as Ian mentioned earlier in the call, they use a 2-year term. So with people that do not meet their credentials requirements by the end of the term, essentially what happens is, because we have an end date, the credential expires at the end of that term. So if people try to access it, it will show the information, but it will be grayed out and showing that it had expired and not been renewed.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much for that answer, Corey. Okay, well, as I say, I think we will bring it to a close now. Once again, thank you very much both to Doug and Corey for your attendance today and for giving such a good explanation of your implementation of Accredible. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending. We hope you found it a useful session. And thank you, Jen, for being in the background answering everybody's question.
Right, and Ian, if you want to forward any questions to us, by email, and I'd be happy to, answer some questions.
That's very kind of you, Doug. Thank you very much, and thank you all, and goodbye.
Goodbye.